So it is time for our monthly chat with Chris Lajewski from the Montezuma Audubon Center. Spring has sprung. Chris, thanks so much for talking with us today. My first question for you, going off script, flip-flopping weather, 80-something one week, 40-something the next week. Any impact as far as the wildlife that you're seeing out there on that?
Well, with the warmer conditions, the southerly winds blowing back in mid-April and actually even early April, we did see a big push of migratory birds coming back into the Finger Lakes region. And that also pushed the waterfowl out of our region and moved them up into their breeding areas, which is the boreal forest of Canada, and some go as far north as the Arctic tundra. That's right on schedule. Waterfowl migration typically ends in April. We started to see some early neotropical migratory songbirds coming back into the Finger Lakes region slightly earlier than normal because of those milder conditions we had in April. Species like Baltimore oriole, some of our warbler species, even saw a report of a ruby-throated hummingbird spotted in the Finger Lakes region. Again, not extremely early, but a little bit earlier than normal. We typically think of those smaller songbirds that overwinter in Central and South America to come back into the Finger Lakes right around early May. So maybe just a few days earlier, but pretty much right on cue. We also saw some wildflowers blooming and quickly transitioning from flowering going into seed formation. So species like the bloodroot, which is a native wildflower of the forests, and trout lily kind of came, bloomed, and went very quickly because of the 85-degree weather. But still, we're seeing new migratory birds every day, and it is a great time to be out at the Montezuma Wetlands Complex.
Going to be wet and chilly at least for another week or 10 days or so. Does that extended cooler period after having that unusually warm stretch there for a week, week and a half, does that have any impact, or do you expect to see things pretty much going as would normally be in early May?
With rainier conditions and potentially northwest wind blowing fairly consistently over the next 5 days, 7 days, we might see a slowdown in the bird migration. Birds want to travel and find it easier to travel when they have drier conditions and calm winds or a southerly wind blowing. That helps them with their long and arduous journey as they're going from southern areas up north to their breeding grounds. But I still expect new birds, new warblers coming in. We'll probably start to see more sandpipers and plovers and other shorebirds coming back into the area as well. We've had an interesting sighting over the last couple of weeks down at the Montezuma National Wildlife Refuge that I wanted to highlight, and that's the glossy ibis. This is typically a coastal bird from New England down through the Gulf Coast states during the breeding season. And this is a medium-sized wading bird, so little less than half the size of a great blue heron, just to put it into context. And it's a deep maroon color, maybe some emerald and bronze and violet colors if the sun is shining on it just right. It's a long-legged bird with a long bill, and it forages in marshes. And one of the best places to see it has been along the wildlife drive down along the Montezuma National Wildlife Refuge area just off of routes 5 and 20 in Seneca Falls. So we will sometimes see this species coming into Montezuma during migration. Can't say for sure why it found Montezuma, how it found Montezuma. It's well off its normal breeding range, but truly a spectacular bird, one that is bringing a lot of people to the Montezuma Wetlands Complex to see.
Which just, obviously the visitor center just reopened. Spring is kind of in full swing there. Is now kind of a solid opportunity to get in there before things get too crowded, when the weather does really start to switch over and start to see some unique things out there?
The Montezuma National Wildlife Refuge Visitor Center and Wildlife Drive opened back on April 1st. And a lot of people have been taking advantage of that. They've been driving along that 3.5 mile long wildlife drive and enjoying all the waterfowl that we're moving through in April. Now they're seeing the shorebirds and wading birds and unusual birds like glossy ibis. Bald eagles are pretty much a daily sight along that stretch. So it's starting to pick up, and that's great. And the Wildlife Drive is open every day from sunrise to sunset, as are the National Wildlife Refuge's trails. And the Visitor Center at the Wildlife Refuge is open daily from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. That's a great opportunity for people to go in, enjoy the exhibits in that Visitor Center, learn from staff and volunteers there about where the birds are being sighted, where they can go and explore and go hike, or what birds have been sighted along Wildlife Drive. And then, of course, Montezuma Audubon Center has up in Savannah, where I am. We didn't close during the winter months, and we are open Tuesday through Saturday from 10 to 4. But our trail system and 2 miles of trails, 200 acres, are open every day from sunrise to sunset. Ample opportunities for people to get out and explore the birds, of the wildlife, and wildflowers that are blooming right now.
I was going to ask you the last time we talked about this. Spring, it's usually wet, rain, not unusual. The next week or so, we're probably going to see like 3 inches of rain over a span of 5-6 days. How do the trail systems tend to handle the spring rain? Does it get a little squirrely with the mud, or does it handle it pretty well?
At Montezuma Audubon Center, with our 2 miles of trails, we've got 1 mile that goes through forest and grassland habitat. Most of that trail is flat. There is one slight incline up and over through our forest and grassland. Otherwise, it's flat, and it's made out of stone dust, so it does drain very well. We never have standing water along that trail, so that will be accessible every day when people come and enjoy Montezuma Audubon Center. We also have a mile of trail around the marshes, and that's more of a earthen berm trail system, and it's made out of the vegetation on top is grass for the most part, and so that can get a little damp. There are just 1 or 2 spots where we might have a little bit of standing water, so muck boots or hiking boots would be a good idea to enjoy that trail. But that's certainly worth getting out and exploring, because we'll have a lot of opportunities for people to see Caspian terns, secretive marsh birds like common gallinule, American coot, pied-billed grebe, and many other bird species.
Speaking of the grebe, that is our species spotlight for this month. Talk to us a little bit about that bird.
Yeah, this is a fun, small, chunky, what we call a secretive marsh bird. It typically inhabits dense marsh habitats with cattails and other native vegetation. And because it's so small and it does tend to stay hidden, that's why we call it secretive, and you're more likely to hear this bird than see it. And it's got like a compact body with a slender neck, a relatively large, blocky head with a short, thick bill. And people see it and might think it's a small duck, but it's actually what we call a marsh bird, because it doesn't have webbed feet as ducks do. It has more like chicken-like feet with Velcro pads to help them swim through the water. They are good swimmers. They do dive down into the water to feed on insects, fish, crustaceans, and other aquatic life in the marsh. We have them here during breeding season, so they're just now starting to come back into our area. And you wouldn't know it, but with the number of breeding pied-billed grebes we have in the Montezuma Wetlands Complex, but they are a New York State threatened species, and that's due to habitat loss over the last couple hundred years. Many of the wetlands in New York State, actually 60% of New York State's wetlands, have been altered or completely lost due to human activities, draining of wetlands for agricultural reasons, or people wanting to actually build in those wetland areas. So it's a species that we have a lot of at Montezuma Wetlands Complex. You can see this along Wildlife Drive at the refuge. We have them in the marshes up at Montezuma Audubon Center, and in many of the marshes across the New York State DEC areas in Savannah.
Very cool. Still time to get students out there to the Audubon Center. Talk to us a little bit about that.
Yeah, we're inviting teachers, scout leaders, leaders of other community organizations to give us a call up at Montezuma Audubon Center, Route 89 in Savannah, to engage their students, their young people in conservation activities and educational programs. We are a year-round facility, and right now we are getting ready for the very busy school field trip season. We're going to see students as young as pre-K all the way through high school level. And when students come to the Montezuma Audubon Center, we connect them with nature and the birds and the habitats up at the Audubon Center through minds-on and hands-on activities. These are designed for children in developmentally appropriate concepts. So we gear the program to the standards and the curriculum that students are learning in the classroom, and also appropriately for other young people who come maybe through a scout program or a boys and girls club activity. A lot of different opportunities for these young people to get out and explore Audubon Center. We've got a Montezuma's Wild Wetlands activity, nature detectives. They can get involved in a bird migration sensation program, living environment, habitat restoration projects, so many opportunities for them. Now, because we've been taking reservations now for the last several months, we do have limited space available, but we are still taking reservations for scout programs and school field trips, and adults can give us a call at the Audubon Center or simply send us an email for more information, and we can circle back with them. And that email address, very simple, montezuma@audubon.org. Again, space is limited, but looking forward to bringing in about 1,000 school children to Audubon Center and a few hundred scout individuals this spring.
Awesome stuff. Absolutely awesome stuff. We've been talking about Onondaga Lake on and off here for the last few months. Conservation Corps' Bluebirds and More program happening next weekend. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, Saturday, May 6th at 1 o'clock in the afternoon over at the Honeywell Onondaga Lake Visitors Center, which is over by the Orange parking lot at the State Fair. We're going to be welcoming in John Rogers for a 1-hour presentation entitled Bluebirds and More. Now, John is a wonderful individual. I've known him for many, many years. And he has maintained a trail of bluebird boxes all across central New York for 4 decades. He is the preeminent expert in eastern bluebird conservation. He's led numerous, hundreds of programs and workshops over the years in states all across the Northeast United States, Mid-Atlantic states. He's even gone up into Canada and worked in a couple of Canadian provinces. He's the co-founder of the New York State Bluebird Society way back in 1982. So we are proud to welcome John Rogers to the Onondaga Lake Conservation Corps for this unique look at the New York State bird, eastern bluebird. He's going to be talking during this presentation about nesting boxes, proper placement, proper dimensions of an eastern bluebird box, how to manage those nesting boxes, and so many more different facets of eastern bluebird. And because he's a wonderful naturalist, John's going to also touch on wildflowers and native habitats of our eastern bluebird. We are taking reservations for this unique program. We know it's going to fill up. And so folks can go to the Onondaga Lake Conservation Corps website, and that is ny.audubon.org/OLCC. To reserve a spot for this program. It's just $5 a person. And after John's wonderful presentation, we're inviting folks for an optional nest box installation activity that's going to help the eastern bluebirds and other cavity nesting birds at Onondaga Lake.
Very cool. And finally, volunteer opportunities. You don't have to volunteer when it's 45 degrees and raining in upstate New York. But as the weather gets better here, especially into later spring and then summer, there are plenty of opportunities, right?
Yeah, and we just had a wonderful event 2 days ago at Montezuma Audubon Center. 24 people came out and helped us with a native plant restoration project in our flower beds right in front of Montezuma Audubon Center. And then another group of individuals were out in our forest helping us remove invasive bush honeysuckle shrubs and getting our tree guards back upright and installed after the winter months. Some of the tree guards, which protect white oak and red oak and black cherry seedlings from the deer, they tend to fall over during the winter months on occasion. So with wind and snow and ice, they tend to flop over. Volunteers help us get them upright and protecting those seedlings. We're going to be doing similar activities next Wednesday. That's going to be coming up on May 3rd. So we're inviting people to give us a call at Montezuma Audubon Center. That's 315-365-3588, or they can email us at montezuma@audubon.org to register for a wonderful morning. We spend about 3 hours working in our flower beds and in the forest, helping with bird habitat. And then we get together for lunch, which is provided by our friends of the Montezuma Wetlands Complex after the morning activities, and generally take another hour or so. But folks don't have to stay for lunch if they don't want to. They want to get on with their daily activities. That is just fine. So this is the second of many volunteer opportunities we've got going on across the Montezuma Wetlands Complex this year. We're going to be having many activities down at the National Wildlife Refuge as well, invasive species mapping projects, removal projects as well. And as we transition into the summer months, we're going to be looking forward to getting volunteers involved in water chestnut removal activities. That's another invasive plant that tends to inhabit more of a marshy and river system. Great activity for the summertime. You're in kayaks and canoes and with like-minded individuals, hand pulling water chestnut up out of the water, having a good time and helping us improve quality of Montezuma's habitat for birds, of the wildlife, and the enjoyment of people. So again, folks can see all of these activities on our website, which is montezuma.audubon.org. Again, montezuma.audubon.org for all these volunteer opportunities, as well as programs and special events coming up.
Chris, as always, thank you for your time. We will be talking to you next month.
Always a pleasure, Josh. Thank you.
That'll do it for this edition of Finger Lakes Today. If you'd like to see more conversations like this one, check out the show on your favorite podcast platform or subscribe to the FingerLakes1.com YouTube channel. Have a great day, and we will see you next time.